So my presentation is called The First Screen. And it's really about anybody who is looking to communicate to an audience. Whether you are selling them something, whether you want to teach them something, it's really about what's the best way to reach the people that you want to talk to. So when I came out before the first time, and I introduced myself, I told you that I own a small advertising agency. And when I tell people that I work in advertising, this is what they think, right? Like, oh, that must be really cool, that's so glam. Nah, it's really more like it, right? Long hours, hard work, and very often no air conditioning. But the truth is that no matter what my creative director tells you, advertising is not about going to Cannes and winning gold lions. It's nice. But our job, really, is to get people to part with their hard-earned money. Now, to be fair, that requires a certain amount of creativity, right? What Nigerians like to call packaging. There's a great company in New York that has figured out how to make people pay $15 for garbage. I feel like I'm in the wrong business. But it doesn't really matter how creative, how engaging, how ingenious your idea is if it doesn't get to the right people, right? So creativity and content is one thing, but as important is channel, which is how what we call the way that you reach your specific audience. Because if you reach the wrong people, or you don't reach anyone at all, then you may as well just have burned that massive pile of money that helped you build that gold award-winning campaign. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is channel, and the channel that I feel is being underutilized and is actually the most efficient way to reach people in this market currently. So before I start, I'm going to take you through some numbers, and everybody has their own sources, but all the numbers shake out to be just about the same, and I'll go off over there and you can interrogate me about where I got my in detail. Before I get into that, this is a pyramid, and this is really the way that we tend to think about the consumer market in Nigeria, right? At the top, there's a very small, super rich bunch of people, those 8 people that live in Banana Island in their own houses. Yes, that's them. And then the next group of people are the affluent. So they're the people who have not yet graduated to Banana Island. So all you lucky phase 1 people, this is you. And then at the bottom is a large pool of the poor. This is the rural poor and the urban super poor. So these are the guys that they do buy stuff, but they buy the stuff that it will allow them to live, right? So they don't really have a lot of extra money to be spending on stuff. The largest group of people, and where most industries get the bulk of their customers, is what we call the mass. And there's been a lot of conversation the last 2 or 3 years about the growing middle class in Nigeria. What they really mean is middle income. So this is the mass. These are people that are spending between $2 and $6 a day, right? So they have enough money to take care of the basics, and they're beginning to have that little extra that makes them classic consumers. So they're making decisions based on taste and brand as opposed to like the basic functionality. And so if you're selling anything from telecoms to soap to banking products, this is really where the bulk of your customer base is. Now, when you say mass in Nigeria, this is the image that comes to mind, right? There's the market woman. She's like middle-aged, she's not very sophisticated, she doesn't know how to use a phone, she doesn't really know anything about what's happening anywhere in the world. And if you listen to a lot of the communications that are out there, especially on radio, you understand that people are marketing to this person. However, the reality is that this is actually what the mass market looks like. Younger, mobile, online, and even if they've never traveled, they have a sense of what's happening outside of Nigeria. And how do I know all this? I'm brilliant, but also the numbers prove me out. So, like I said, everyone's total numbers are a little bit different, but they all kind of end up in the same general area, give or take 1 million. Our total population is about 174 million people. The median age, which is the age at the middle of the population, which means that half the population is older and half the population is younger, is just under 18. Now, the startling thing about this for me is that when I was doing a similar presentation 2 years ago, the median age was 19. In 2 years, our median age has dropped by almost 12 months. That's because, one, our life expectancy is so low, but also because we continue to have children in large amounts. So what's going to happen is for the next 5 or so years, this number will continue to go down. Actually, my favorite factoid, in 2011, there were more children born in Nigeria than in the whole of the European Union. Think about that for a second, really. That's why they don't want to give you all visas. Sorry. But the thing about that, though, and the reason that I want to talk about that median age is when they talk to us about internet penetration and phone penetration, they do those numbers against total population, right? Not against adults. So currently, there's about 55 million Nigerians online. These are unique internet users. So that's, if you figure that the total adult population is like 87, like 55 over 87 gives us a much higher internet penetration number than that 32% that everyone's talking about. But for me, the most interesting thing was, so of the 55 million people that are online in Nigeria, 78% of them are between 19 and 35 years old. So remember that I had said that there are like 87 million adults in Nigeria? According to Athena, 62% of those are between 18 and 35. So the bulk of your adult population is under 35. So if you figure this number, so 78%, and I did these numbers before, 700 on stage, 78% of 55 is like 43 million, something like that. It's 43 million, no, 34 million and 48. Anyway, if these numbers are to be believed, and there are people that question them, but if these numbers are to be believed, then the Nigerian population, 18 to 35, has a little over 70% internet penetration. So that is something for us all to be thinking about. And to give you something to compare this to, DSTV has 2 million subscribers. Just think about that. But for me, the most compelling thing out of all of this is that 72% of internet access in Nigeria happens via mobile device. So when you are thinking internet, now it's like, oh my God, there's like 48 million Nigerians online. If you're developing and thinking about them, understand that they are accessing via a mobile device. So, okay, so now I was like, yes, I'm gonna go and build an app for the iTunes store and get a Samsung. It's all this, hang on a second. We are still a feature phone market. 60% of mobile internet hits in this country come from feature phones. Now, a lot of people, it's hard to tell the difference between a feature and a smartphone, but it's all about platform though, and about sort of the things that they can do. So that little techno phone can do the 60% of what my BlackBerry can do that I need, but it's not gonna do that extra 40%. And this will become, why I'm talking about this will become apparent as I go further down the line. The interesting thing for me is that this 25% smartphone number, right? Because last year the number was 9, and I think that actually it's a secondary, secondhand market is moving our smartphone numbers up. And this will continue to change as people are beginning to see lower end smartphones come into the market. So what am I up here about and telling you all these numbers, right? If you are a brand that is targeting a mass market consumer, not an affluent, not a premium consumer, a mass market consumer, mobile is your first screen. That is the first place you should be thinking about communicating to them. And there are some implications to this. I was saying just earlier, just in terms of generational shifts, I have a 15-year-old nephew who's like 6'2". But he does not understand the concept of waiting until you get home to find something out, to watch something, to talk to someone. Like, he doesn't understand what I mean. Like, he cannot conceive of a world, right? Because he's always had a phone. And as long as he's been able to use a phone, he's able to Google it. He has a fundamentally different approach to the world, and thus fundamentally different expectations of the world than I did growing up. And this is something that we're seeing across the world, but specifically in developing nations where our populations are so young. So the first thing, and this is a thing that I struggle a lot with my clients, many of whom are over 35, is that what mobile does, and what mobile internet specifically does, is it changes the flow of conversation. Traditionally, it is a one-to-many communication. I have a billboard, I have a radio ad, I have a TV ad, and millions of people see it. And they like it or they don't like it, and maybe they go buy the thing, maybe they don't, but that's all that I know. They've heard it, and we measure success on how many people can say that they've heard it and that they liked it. What mobile, and specifically mobile internet, do is change it to a one-to-one communication. Because now you are communicating to me via my personal device. So even if you're communicating to lots of other people as well, my communication is personal, and I expect it to be such. There is no reason I should be getting anonymous emails. If you have my phone number, you know my name. It means that if you communicate to me, I should be able to respond. Right? And this suddenly gives agency to consumers, because all of a sudden they're not just this passive receptacle. They expect to be able to critique, and they expect you to respond. One of my favorite stories is that somebody was sitting, one of the banks, I won't say who it is, was sitting in one of the banks, and they were complaining on Twitter about, and this actually happened to a friend of mine, complaining on Twitter about the wait. And the branch manager came out and said, who is so-and-so and so-and-so, and saw him. And that is the reality that we live with. And if you're not, I always say to my clients, if you're going to be on Twitter, then your customer service needs to be on Twitter. Because when they ask you a question, if you tell them to call customer service, they will never, ever, ever answer you again. You are now in a one-to-one relationship with them. And that's how you have to think about it. The next thing is Sam talked about, so it's not content now, it's creation. Sorry. Everyone says that content is king, and we know you have to have good stuff, right? Because if it's not fun, and it's not engaging, and it's not entertaining, they're not going to stop and look at it. But that's not enough. Remember, you are now in a one-to-one engagement. They need to be able to respond, adapt, and share. So when you're creating for them, you need to be thinking about, how do I build in tools, opportunities for them to respond to me, to take this and make their own something out of it, and then to share it. We're going to begin to see more and more co-creation. And the truth is that they have the tools, like literally at their fingertips, to do it, and they will do it anyway. It's called a meme. I can create something now. I can take an ad, I can take a story, and I can create something and send it out. So if you don't get on top of it and create ways to co-create with them, they'll do it without you, and before you know it, they'll have taken your brand. Really, really important. Content is not enough. You have to engage them, and it is a continuous engagement. How are you talking to them daily, weekly? You have to move at the speed of light, or the speed of life, rather. If they're awake, you have to be awake too. There's nothing more annoying than trying to reach someone to do business and they're not there because it's 5:30. My day doesn't end at 5:30. If I'm a student, my day might start at midnight. And if I am expressing something about your brand, there needs to be someone there to respond to me. What this also means is that the cycle of creation has to speed up. You can't be doing a campaign every 6 months anymore. Even if you have a major theme line, you need to be thinking in smaller time increments. What is our content calendar for this month? How are we communicating on a daily basis? How are we following up on what people are saying? What is the conversation out there? If the conversation turns, what do we need to get in front of it? You have to move at the same speed that your consumers are moving, because they're not waiting for you to catch up. You have to be the right size for the platform. We all understand kind of the bandwidth issues that we're dealing with on a daily basis. But beyond that, people consume information on a mobile device differently than they do on a desktop or a laptop. One of the things that I liked about the ARIC product demonstration was that they clearly understand that mobile works differently. The information has to be in bite-sized chunks. You have to think about it. Most of the people are looking at this information on a screen that's this big. Remember, this is a feature phone market. So you have to be thinking, so that's like 5, 6, 7 minutes at a time. No one has the time to reading 600 words at a time. You have to be the right size for the platform. Twitter works differently than Facebook, works differently than your website. You can't just paste the same information across. You have to be the right size for the platform. And the last thing, and it's, I think for me the most important thing, is you have to find them where they are. Just because you're in the digital space doesn't mean that you're suddenly going to be communicating with them. Because the great thing about the digital space is that it allows you to tune out people that you don't want to hear. So you have to find their spaces, their communities, or you have to create spaces for them to come to you. What mobile, and specifically mobile internet, does is it gives our consumers greater choice. All of a sudden, you're competing in a world of 3 gazillion million channels. They don't have to come to yours. So you have to, one, go to them, you have to engage them, or you have to create a place where they can come and find you. For a long time, people were talking about, there's, too many medias, too many channels. Well, that problem is now exploded. And I talked in the beginning about the fact that creativity is important, content is important, conversations are important. The most important thing is relevance. Because if you're not relevant to them, if you're not showing them something in a way they understand, in a place where they feel comfortable, they literally will click and be out. So to end it all, why did I come out here and talk about this? And why am I so passionate about this? My job is to get people to spend their money. That's how I make my money, right? I get other people to spend their money. And for me, it's about how do I reach them in a way that's most efficient, in a way that's most engaging, and in a way that's most intimate. And what better way than the one thing that I know that they all carry with them almost 24 hours a day. Thank you.